All right. Hello and welcome to our noon virtual conversation, Top 5 at the Museum with Alberto Aguilar and Jorge Lucero. My name is Maura Flood. I'm an Associate Director of Innovation and Creativity in the Department of Learning and Public Engagement at the Art Institute of Chicago. I've been reflecting a little bit about how best to introduce the practices of these two artists. Both of them teach in higher education. They teach art classes in Champaign, Urbana, and also Chicago. But more importantly, they're also both artists whose work is really expansive across many modes and kind of forms. So there's performance, there's writing, there's object making, painting, teaching, installation, even administration, but then also life. And what I appreciate most about both of your practices, Jorge and Alberto, is that they exist kind of everywhere and also anywhere. You kind of take on anyone around you as collaborators. So that could be your family members, that could be students, strangers, and then also kind of uses whatever materials or spaces are available. So it could be your office in Champaign, Jorge, or I'm thinking about Alberto, you know, piles of clothes in your house or marker boards in your bathroom. I describe both of your practices as resourceful and generous and incredibly present. And I'm just really excited to hear about, you know, kind of the ways in which our collection has influenced your practices over time. So for today's program, Alberto and Jorge will be sharing with you all their top 5 art pieces from the collection as they kind of talk about the ways in which they have influenced their practices. This is a format that was suggested and designed by the artists, and then our team created the presentation to pair with it. The program will be presented in 4 parts. So the first part, Alberto and Jorge will guess what the other person's picks are. Then for the second part, they'll go through one at a time and look at their top 5. For the third, we'll reveal a winner, like the person that picked had the most correct guesses of each other's artworks. And then if time permits, we're hoping to get to honorable mentions at the end. So one thing to note, the chat feature will be activated during the program. And so we invite you to populate that. You know, you can react to the program, reflect on it, share some of your own Art Institute faves in there. But Alberto and Jorge will not be on the chat. They're going to be kind of immersed in the conversation. So, but I'll be in there and I can answer your questions and that kind of thing. So, and I'll also maybe like kick off the presentation by just popping their websites into the chat. So those of you who aren't familiar with their work, you can kind of see a little bit about it. So I think with that, we'll turn it over to, I'll turn it over to Jorge and Alberto to do the presentation. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you, Maura.
Maybe the first thing to say, Albert, is that we went to school together. We went to the art.
We went to high school together. We should make that known.
Yeah, we went to high school together, and then Alberto was a year ahead of me, so he graduated, went to the Art Institute, and then I would visit him sometimes when he was at school, and that made me want to go there. And so then I ended up there, and we were there for the whole time together. We shared a studio together at some point. But I think maybe one of the most important things that happened while we were there together is that we would, because our studio was in the Columbus Drive building, which is attached to the museum. And maybe one of the most amazing things that we would do is we would just saunter over, like from the studio in the middle of, we were both studying painting at the time. So in the middle of painting, we would walk over to the studio and to the museum and just look at things together, like constantly, like almost every single day. So I think when Maura was inviting us to do something remotely, we thought that one of the best things that we could possibly do is revisit those times that we used to go to the museum and maybe talk about some of those works that were so impactful to us.
Yeah. And we would also go there separately. There was times that we went there separately, and there was times that we went there when I think we were feeling uncertain about what we were doing. The collection for sure has influenced both of our our practices. But because we've been going for so long, I think that, the work that we were interested in at the beginning has sort of evolved and changed. So anyway, what's the first part of this?
Well, let's switch the slide here. So I think I'm going to go first and guess. These are my 5 guesses for the artworks that I thought were the most impactful for Alberto. And we won't talk about them that much unless, Alberto, you want to say anything about my guesses or anything.
Well, I go ahead, finish what you were saying.
I was just going to say, I mean, part of it is because these were some of the ones that we repeatedly would go back to. Part of it was because these are some of the ones that I saw influence your work by actually watching your practice also. Yeah. And then even some that I've seen return in some of your even more recent work, where I see some of the work still impacting. And I was going to pick 5 different artists, but I decided to put 2 Gorkys in there on the off chance that you only picked one of these, and I didn't know which one it was going to be. So I figured my odds would go up by picking both of them.
That was good. It's very interesting because when I see this slide, like I see myself, which is really weird.
Oh, that's awesome.
But well, I won't tell you whether you're right or wrong.
No, don't tell me.
Yeah, but it looks nice.
Oh, look at this.
So with you, I decided to go full out painter because I really think of you as a painter.
Yeah.
Even when you try to escape painting, I always think of you as a painter. And I know maybe the Alex Katz is wrong, but it's funny because that Alex Katz reminds me of a Wes Anderson painting, a Wes Anderson movie, and like I just felt like you to me, and I like I said, I think it's wrong. And there were some oldies that I wanted to bring in here that you did during my video series that you spoke of during my video series, but my guess was that you weren't going to go with those just to throw me off.
Well, it's interesting because, so I actually, maybe Maura could find the video and actually post it in the chat also. But yeah, Alberto did a project a few years ago that he called Formative Works, where he interviewed different artists in the collection, like walking through the collection, showing things from the collection. And it's true. I mean, I did have that sort of conflict in my head where I was thinking, should I use some of those works? Those works are so important. And you'll see in a minute whether or not I did. But one thing I do want to show you about this, your guesses already, I didn't pick this Tadeo Ando piece, but I did just write it down right here, like before you guessed it, because I was thinking, when I was thinking about us going to the museum and all that, we were undergraduates when we first started going to the school. And one of the things that we experienced a lot of was just getting down. We would get down sometimes because of life, sometimes because of our actual studio practice. But I remember so many times of us just walking over and walking into that room and just sitting in that room with those trees or columns or whatever they are, and just being quiet in that space and almost like recentering oneself, maybe thinking, praying. Sometimes we wouldn't even talk. We would just sit in there together. And then as soon as somebody else walked in or something and interrupted it, we would just leave, right? But it was a very profound space, and maybe I should have chosen it, but I guess there's just so many things actually.
Yeah, and I mean, I thought that you were going to go with a more, contemporary list of paintings, just to be a little more up to date. So that's why I went with these.
Well, you're going to be really surprised that I think.
All right, well, let's see.
Let's go with the first one.
I'm guessing you went old times, oldies.
Let's see, yeah, some.
All right, who's first?
First.
Number 5.
You. Oh.
So I want to say the process that I went about choosing these, because I wanted this to be a creative process, the choices that I made and how I organized them. So first, I should say that these are not in order of interest at all. They are in order of the dates that they were made, starting from oldest to newest. So I just didn't want to give them, I didn't want to rate them like this one I like more than that one. My other rule was that all of these works needed to be currently on display, because I want people to watching this, if they're interested, to go see these works. So those were my ideas. And Eva Hesse. Like the other thing is that these things are things that I saw and I didn't know how much of an influence they had on me. And maybe I didn't even like them when I first saw them. They're kind of things that I've always resisted, but have been there and have always informed my work. And of course, I like this one because it's like in between painting and sculpture. And it's just so like absurd, this thing that comes out into the space. It's almost like you can walk through it. I don't think you're allowed to. So don't do that because it's currently up. And then also it has this sort of painting frame, but the frame is wrapped sort of like ceremoniously with this bed sheet. And then it's also painted from a light gray to dark gray. But I just think it's a very interesting piece. And I love also how the thing kind of touches the ground.
Yeah. This is one of those pieces that for me, like now that this many years out of being out of school and being exposed to these things constantly, has really stayed with me also as just like a huge permission for what can be done as a picture or as a painting.
Yeah. And that was my approach, going for those things that you're talking about.
Yeah. Good. Well, let's do mine then. So I actually was trying, I think I didn't put them in order of top 5 either. Like, I mean, I think I did just because I forced myself to do it. I forced myself to take my top 5 and say, okay, this is like something that actually ranks higher than the other thing. But it was like splitting hairs. I mean, the top 5 could have been placed in any order whatsoever. And I think this Maurice Denis is just one of those pieces that gets lost actually in the Impressionist galleries. As far as I know, it's the only one that the museum owns. And it's just one of those paintings that I always like the palette. I love the flatness of it. I love the design elements of it. And I think I kept coming back to it because of those things. And then even more so, maybe about 20 years ago when my wife and I were in Saint Germain and we actually visited Maurice Denis's home, and he had built a chapel right next to his house. And he made the stained glass windows for it and all that. And I just think he's one of these painters that is underappreciated. Even he's categorized sort of in this Nabi category with like Bonnard and Vuillard. And even in that category, I think he's all the way at the bottom. Like they had not bottom in terms of quality, but just in terms of the way that people conjure up those names. Even when the Art Institute had that Beyond the Easel exhibition where it was Vuillard, Bonnard, and Maurice Denis, I think he was the least well known of them. So I wanted to just bring this one and maybe cast the spotlight on him.
Well, so far I'm right, at least in that you're choosing paintings.
I think, yeah, mostly.
you are to me a painter.
Yeah. All right, let's see the next one.
I should say that I don't even necessarily know a lot about these artists that I chose. Like I know, just sort of like the common knowledge of Eva Hesse. But actually I was watching a documentary today of her work in preparation for this. My second choice is this Sol-LeWitt, which I love for many reasons. I mean, I think the most important reason, because these things are all things that I would also take people to go see it, like my students. And the reason why I like this one is because nobody notices that it's there, that it goes unnoticed. And I like that idea that you find something, you discover something in the museum, like it's done in pencil directly on the wall. And Sol-LeWitt actually didn't draw these lines. It's instructions that are given to the owner of the piece of how to install it. I remember that when we were in undergrad, there was actually a call to be able to be one of the people that made these lines, which I could imagine, which I could never do myself. But I love the idea of giving instructions to creative work. And I like how it goes up like it's more and more lines as you go down, so the density of the value goes darker. Yeah, so that, and there's also my favorite public work is in the city is actually the Soloist that's on Jackson that also goes unnoticed. It looks like a giant radiator grill or something. But I like both of these works for the same reason, and I love this idea of being able to give instructions for a work to go up years, after, in his case, after you're gone.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I remember that call. Actually, that was for when the MCA had the retrospective, the Soloist retrospective, and I also remember seeing the call and sort of like poo-pooing it, like that I wouldn't go do it, but I regret it, actually. I wish that at that time, it was just going to be like a job, right? But I wish at that time I would have done it, because then I would have at least felt like I was able to contribute to one of these. But all the things that you said about it are things that I love about it too. And I also want to expand, actually, by saying that one other thing that we used to do is we used to then go into the city and look at all the works in the city itself, right? Like go and hunt this thing down. Like if we knew that there was something to go see, whether it was the Claes Oldenburg back column that's all the way in the West Loop, or almost in the West Loop, and that piece that you mentioned, that's in close to the Art Institute. I loved going on those adventures also, those walks. So this is my second one, and this is related actually to those treks that we used to take. One of the most special things that I felt we could do as students at the School of the Art Institute was to go into the prints and drawing space and to ask for things to be pulled, to make reservations. It all felt very official. You made a reservation, something was pulled for you, and you had an appointment, and then you would come out and see it. So if I were to ask, can I see all of the Barbara Rossis or all of the Carl Wersums or whatever I wanted to see, they would, or a selection of them, they would have them prepped for you, right? They would give you your gloves to wear, and you could sit there, and in those days you could sit there with a pencil and just draw from whatever it was that you were looking at. I just love the fact that there were these things that were archived or hidden or not on display, but that you could ask to see them. And in particular, I chose this piece because Barbara Rossi was just such an influential teacher for both of us, actually. And she's still a faculty member there at the school. And the thing that it's funny that Alberto says this thing about thinking of me as a painter, because I think that the impact that Barbara used to teach a class on space, and the impact, like pictorial space, and the impact that course had on my ability to look at work and to teach from it and also make it, has been almost eternal. I think it impacts almost every visual decision that I make. And I chose this one in particular because I always loved how in this image you get the depth of the space and the flatness of the space all simultaneously, so that it is a space that recedes and goes back into this horizon of these little trees back there. But at the same time, the creatures are sort of creatures which are like chairs. They're like chairs and creatures, and they're also photographs of teeth, I think, that Barbara got from her dentist or something like that. And they end up becoming like, they almost are like lined up on a shelf. So they have this kind of dictionary or taxonomy look to them, where they're like lined up as categories. And of course they reflect the things that Barbara was looking at in things like Indian miniature painting, and ink wash painting, and anyway, so this is, it's just a thing that you had to spend a lot of time with.
Well, not only are you going full painting and drawing, but you're also going full obscure works.
Yeah,
you got me there.
I guess so. All right,
on to the next one, number 3. So just to reiterate, I'm going in order of time rather than in order of preference. This is 1977. I went to do one last check at the museum to see if I was missing something. And sure enough, I walk into the current exhibition. Oh, I forgot the name of the artist. I'm not good with names, but there's an artist who has a show of these tapestries on the in the Renaissance space, actually, of the museum. Her name is Bisa Butler, and they're giant tapestries. But this piece was put in the exhibition sort of as an influential work to Bisa Butler. And I remember this work in two instances. One instance was when I think maybe you and I saw it, a giant collage by Romir Bearden. And you and I saw it, and I was really impressed by this idea. And I think this is something that really interests both of us, this idea of remaking a work like from past history. Here in this case, Romir Bearden is paying homage to, what's his name, Pinturicchio, which is a lesser known Renaissance artist, and Benin sculptures from Africa. So kind of fusing these two things together to create a new narrative, an amazing narrative. And the colors are, to me, really amazing. The muted palette, even though it's like colorful, it still is very relational and muted. And then and I actually did research on this and saw the original painting. It's pretty close. I mean, there really is a cat on the bottom, and there really is a bird on the bottom, and everything really is in its same place. But Romir Bearden really created something new and exciting. It's sort of like a remix of a past work. And I think that's something that both you and I have done and still do. I still do it with my photographs. I think of art historical works.
Do you think this is related to the some of the paintings that I guessed? Like I feel like, you know, the bathers, for example, the Matisse bathers, and maybe even the plow painting, just the way that form gets handled, you know, the way that handling form. And
definitely. And the last thing I was going to say is the second time that I saw it was actually with one of my students, and this student of mine really was drawn to it, and I feel was influenced by it as well. So just this idea of, and then this third meeting of this thing in the Renaissance galleries. I loved whenever I found like contemporary works or modern works in the Renaissance galleries, like when that Bill Viola show happened and they put the video next to the Pontormo painting.
Right.
Like those moments were always really exciting. So for this show to be happening there, Bisa Butler and Romir Bearden, it's really exciting to throw off the normal uses of these spaces.
Yeah, because it's sort of like it breaks up the categories that the museum typically is set up in. That's good. I love it. Okay.
I was going to choose this one.
Oh,
I was going to choose this as yours, but I didn't do it.
Yeah, well, I mean, this is, again, just another little treasure. Would you categorize this one as obscure?
Maybe to some people. Definitely not to the Chicago Imagists.
Yeah, I think part of it is because, I was so influenced by the Imagists and the things that they were looking at and the things that they were showing us, because I had, as instructors, I actually had Ray Yoshida and Carl Worsom and Barbara Rossi. And I didn't have Roger Brown because he wasn't teaching at the school, but the influence of the Roger Brown study collection for me was paradigm shifting. It blew my mind, actually. And just I think part of it, there's different things happening here. One of them is the time that the painting asks of you, or the time that the artwork asks of you, so that you have to just come back to it over and over and over again, that I had to come back to it over and over again. And also that you just have to spend time in front of it. Right. And, you know, I mean, I don't know how it is today, but in those days, you could get really close. Like you could get, I mean, you could without anybody telling you to back off, right? I mean, you could get this close to the painting and really study it. And these are really small, and they're all together. And of course, you know, my favorite thing about them was always that they felt like jokes, or they felt like they contained jokes in them, or not jokes, but like little winks, you know, from the artist to us. And these in particular, the thing that struck me and the thing that I learned the most from them was this idea of the continuous narrative, right? So that you would have, and I believe I learned that from James Yud, actually, who was a professor of mine at the college. This idea that you could have the same figure in the picture repeated over and over again as a means to sort of tell you the story. So if you look at I mean, obviously in this Ascension one, all the way in the top left hand, that's the same figure, you know, at the bottom by the door, and then being ascended. But the best one is probably the last one here, where you could see the sequence of John the Baptist's head being brought, I believe it's to Herod, right? So this character has a plate, and he is coming through the door, and then is in this little opening. Then he's all the way over on the right, and then he's kneeling here with the plate and the head on it, right? And the same follows, the same sort of convention follows suit in the one that right next to it, because this is when Herod is being asked for the head, and then up here in the top right hand corner where the beheading happens, you can see the same character. The executioner is here with the sword in the front, but also in the back through that doorway, right? So the fact that these characters show up multiple times in the pictures, and that time essentially is getting disrupted in kind of this comic book type way, was always so fascinating. And, you know, of course, the thing I spoke about before too, the way that these artists just messed with space, like pictorial space, and made it all, you know, flat and deep at the same time.
Yeah. And if I chose this work, I would have been proclaimed the winner of this match. And I was going to, but I said, no, he's not going to go. He's not going to go there.
And look at me.
So next, number 2, we're moving along. And I know that this speaks to you, George. I know that it does. And probably for the specific reason that it speaks to me. This is Edgar Heap of Birds, 1990, Boost West. And the reason why I'm telling Jorge that it speaks to him is because we both saw a version of this at the Chicago Public Library, the main library, going, I think, either up or down the escalator. There was always this Edgar Heap of Birds, which, you know, like back then I was not interested in text-based work. Like it bored me. But I would always see this and I would always read it. And it wasn't this one. The museum just acquired this one. And I'm glad that they did. And it's currently up in the new acquisition room. And
I was gonna guess that one of yours was one of the K. Rosen pieces, but
yes, well, it's not
the
up.
next one, is it?
It's not up, so I wouldn't choose that. But
okay.
I just like that this text, you know, the K. Rosen's more like resolved text, right? But I like that this text is actually drawn, so it's almost like thoughts being made into something visual. And also the way that they're just not framed, they're on paper, they're in a grid, and you know, they play with one another. It's like thoughts pass from one to the next. But yeah, the one at the library we would see all the time. And then I think he actually spoke at SAIC when we were undergrads.
Mm-hmm.
So all of that sort of like stuck with me. And I use text in my own work. And this one literally spoke to me.
Before we move to the next one, so don't flip the slide yet, Daniel. I just want to say that I kind of love how the way that we've shown these is maybe showing is actually giving a chronology of our relationship and our development as artists, because I'm sort of showing things from things that were influential that sort of built up to things that are now influential, right? So like they're all influential in different ways, but these, I'm kind of going with like, these are things that we were like going and looking at when we were students, and then, official students. And then these are pieces that we've gone back to look at and have stayed with us as influences as we've sort of, carried on our professional careers or whatever, right?
Yeah. Yeah. And the one in the library is still up, but it's just funny that it spoke to me like always in passing, like it was always because we were going up the escalator to find the things because there's a whole collection in the library. We were finding the things that we really wanted to see, but this thing would always be there, always speaking to me. And I actually went back to see it after I chose this as one.
Don't you think, Albert, don't you think that in some ways we used to make this kind of work too in those days, but it was more like jokey. Like I remember one moment in particular where Alberto and I took a botany class together at the Art Institute, and this is probably a terrible story to tell, but we were not paying attention. We were sitting in the back and we were passing a notebook back to each other, where we were just writing puns of people we knew, like just the names of people we knew with like a pun associated, right? But we were making little drawings and stuff like that. And I feel that sort of wordplay and like either looking into the definition of words or even liking how the word looks, like in the example of the K. Rosen pieces, or how it sounds, even that sort of has morphed into some of the things, a lot of the things that we do now, which have to do with, well, not to tie it all in a nice bow or anything, but because we've become, because we're now, I'm going to say full-blown adults with a lot of responsibilities, we're trying to figure out, as Maura said in the introduction, how to make work in all the sort of in-between spaces of our lives. And I think language is one of those things that we use all the time, and we're just always listening to ourselves or to other people talk, or to the things that sound interesting. I'll just make a quick note about that. There was that banner that you had hanging in the cultural center a couple of years ago that said, "Hey, you, yeah, you," and I can't ever see it. I can't even ever see a picture of it without hearing William Wegman's voice in my own head, right? And I know that's like a shared. Am I giving away a secret here?
No, I don't care.
Okay. I know it's like a shared reference, right? Of like this video that William Wegman made where he's doing it with his stomach.
Yeah, he's talking.
He's like talking with his stomach or something, and the stomach is going, "Hey, you, yeah, you." And I just, that to like catching those things and then turning them into, or like letting them turn into these objects is sort of the.
Oh, that's similar. It's the same thing as the Romir Bearden remix,
Yeah.
And
that actually, it leads to my number 2, actually. So maybe we can switch here. Okay, so
that makes sense.
Does it? Why? Tell me why.
Well, I think you and your mom, you guys are jokers, like you guys are clowns.
Bring my mom into this.
You and your mom are clowns sometimes, You have clown sensibility.
Yeah, I definitely have clown sensibility.
And I think you got it from her.
Maybe you're right. I never thought about that, actually.
It's theatrical, it's tragic, and it's funny.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's maybe all that needs to be said about all the other than when I walked in the first time. So this is an installation of
a video,
several videos. Yeah. There's no actual clown torturing happening, other than the clowns are reacting as if they're being tortured, right? So this clown is saying, "No, no, 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 no," and he's like kicking, and it's just really loud and like impressive because obviously it's in a dark room. You never know what you're going to get when you walk into a dark video installation like that. And I think it was maybe the first thing that I saw that really left me feeling like anything was possible. And it was confusing and scary and beautiful all at the same time. And I think it did come from what you just called my clown sensibility.
I was going to choose this one, but I said, no, he's not going to go that dark. He won't go that dark.
But I mean, it's like, what else? Like I grew up on David Letterman and try to think like sad David Letterman here.
Yeah.
Not like, I mean, most of David Letterman is kind of like a sad thing, right? But for me, it was just maybe the most impactful thing that I saw when I was a young person, David Letterman at night, and Morrissey, right? So it's sort of this sort of mush of both of those things together in the embodiment of Bruce Nauman.
Well, it's an amazing, undeniable piece, and I would sit in this room to watch the whole thing.
Yeah, it is really great. Oh, by the way, actually, if you've never seen this piece before, because I was wondering how it was going to be shown, but you can look it up on YouTube, and there are some really great videos of that people, I don't know if they illegally did it, but they shot them within the installation. And so you can get a sense of it from the videos that are on YouTube.
Just make sure you watch it in a closet or in a dark room. All right.
Okay, number one. Hold on. So you want to say anything else before you show it?
No,
I know you didn't put them. All right, go ahead.
Let's just do it, because we won't get to the honorable mentions. Here's my twist.
Yeah.
And you already talked a lot about it, so I guess I don't have much to say. But I think that this is a space, and it's unique in the museum in that it's not a singular work, like it's a holder of work. And usually, for the most part, when I go in this space, I really don't go to see the work. I go in there to rest and, to reflect, to be quiet, with Alex Bradley Cohen. Sometimes we make sound pieces in here. We were sitting on the floor because they took out the benches. First they took down the doors. There used to be doors in this space, so it was kind of like a church where you could escape the museum, and it's the only room where you could escape the museum in this kind of way. But I think that taking away of the doors, probably for safety reasons, was a bad move, because I really liked it being sort of a self-contained, quiet space. But recently they took out the benches, which I think is okay, as long as you allow yourself to sit on the floor. But I don't know if they would tell you to stop doing that, the guards. But I encourage, laying on the floor, sitting on the floor, rolling on the floor. Mm-hmm. On the empty side. I guess you could do it on the on the half full side too, right? Like where the pillars are, you could also sit in there. You could sit there, which I never did. It's weird that I never sat on that side. I always sat on the empty side. But I found out it's the first architectural work of Tadeo Ando in the United States, the first piece he did. And it's a place where during our time as undergrads, as you said, like whenever I was down, I would go to this space with you sometimes and without you, by myself.
Mm-hmm. I wonder if the removal of the benches, I'm just guessing here, because one thing I always felt about it, and maybe I felt it or maybe I learned it somewhere, but it always felt like coming into a clearing, right? So like you go through this kind of forest, right, of columns or whatever, and then when you come into that, what you're calling the empty side, it's sort of like coming into a clearing of a space or something like that. And that's where the benches were. And I wonder if they removed it so that people would stay, like interact with it in that way, instead of like the benches almost invite you to look at it as opposed to be in it. Yeah. And I wonder if I'm
Well,
not saying that that's the reason, but
yeah,
that.
no, it's probably a COVID thing, like they don't want people hanging out
Oh
in this
yeah,
space.
hanging out.
They
Yeah,
just want you to go in and go out because it's a contained space, and
yeah,
you get as many as 15 people in there.
yeah. Well, I guess now that I'm thinking about it, maybe this was really the most important thing. Like now, and it did go through my process. Like when I was thinking about it, when I was trying to figure out what pieces to choose for myself, but also which ones to guess for you, this one came in and out a bunch of times, and I was I was just trying to figure out, like, I don't know. I guess maybe part of it was me trying to guess the game too, right? Like trying to guess like how this was all going to go.
Yeah.
And I, even without showing my number one yet, um, I think it's beautiful, to think that this piece does have this kind interwoven, um, is interwoven through our shared history.
Yeah. One of us had to choose it.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. I love it, and yeah, it's really good. I love it. So I guess let's go with my number one then. So this is one of the pieces that's in the video that Alberto and I referenced a moment ago. So the Formative Works uh, video that Alberto made a few years ago, I do talk about this Paul Klee, and probably I will say the same things about it now that I did in the video. But first and foremost, it's an oil painting, right? But it's an oil painting that kind of looks like a watercolor painting, and it's small again. I think it has something to do with, I think my attraction to it has something to do with the introduction of Paul Klee to my education as somebody who was making drawings with a kind of de-skilled approach, or like, just it's I'm saying it in a clumsy way because I don't actually mean that he wasn't good at drawing. I just mean that he was purposefully making things have this kind of simplistic appearance to them, or simplified is maybe the right word, simplified appearance to them. And this one in particular, I always loved, again, because of the contradictions. So on the one hand, it's a very simple drawing of a figure, a ghost, which Paul Klee named, and the indicators as to why this figure is a ghost. And it's a very flat surface, right? So the painting is almost it's not monochromatic, but it's all within the same range from top to bottom. The figure is, the background is. But for me, it's made perhaps one of the deepest in the space of the painting is perhaps one of the deepest pictorial spaces in the entire museum collection. And it might not be the super obvious, but the indicator that this guy is a ghost is because we're up here, we're in the air with him, and that little chair is all the way down on Earth. So that little chair in the bottom right hand corner is actually really far down in the space, and this character is all the way up in the sky, and we're floating with the character up here. And then of course I love this little arrow that Paul Klee puts in there to kind of say he's flying that way, or he's going that way, right? So I don't know, I think it just like maybe speaks to the tenderness of or the kind of tender things that I'm attracted to. Maybe that's from the clown sensibility too. There's like the drooping flower part of me, the floppy shoe part. And so it's like funny, it's sad, it's very smart in a way. It's beautiful, if there's anything that I can describe that is that. And really maybe left one of the biggest impressions on me of all of the things that we looked at in that collection.
Yeah. Yeah. And I definitely was going to choose this. I knew that it was on your top, but I didn't know that you would put it on this top. Like I said, I went with the more contemporary paintings. I should have known that you sort of would have went with your past works, the works that have influenced you in the past. Like I chose and this work you liked, and it definitely feels like your sensibility to me. I think the surface quality, but also this sort of like he wasn't an outsider artist, right? But he, and I know that word's kind of weird now, but he had an outsider. He made like outsider looking works or folk looking works, even though he was really, really like trained academically, right? And could draw very, very realistically. But those realistic forms that he used to draw early on were strange in their own right. But like to flatten a space like this and to make it simple like this, I think makes Paul Klee stand out amongst his contemporaries. But
the other thing, Albert, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm done.
I was just going to say the other thing about it that I think we still carry is because you made an allusion to that sensibility that perhaps came from a time at the school when things like what in that time was maybe called outsider art or the influence that moment in Chicago's art history had on the Imagist, for example, and then that famous Dubuffet lecture that impacted everybody. This was before our time, but it trickled its way down into the way that, again, people like Barbara and Ray Yoshida and a lot of the instructors who constantly were telling us and showing us how to look at things that would normally not be considered inspiration or art for that matter. And I think that we carry that to this day. Like that's, even if we're not making pictures or paintings for that matter.
Yeah, I mean, your choices, your guesses of mine at the beginning, like I said, when I saw them, they looked like me, like I felt me in them. Yeah. But I think from the get-go, when I was showing my daughter Madeline like my choices, and I showed her some of these, like I think I had Manet's Mocking of Christ, I had Picasso's Mother and Child, I had the Matisse Bathers. I had that one up until the end, and that's the one that I switched with Ramir Bearden. But Madeline said, no, she said, you can't show this stuff. You can't. She said, don't show. Like she was just discouraging me from showing that past nostalgia. And I'm glad she did that, because I wanted to show things that that are speaking to me now, and that slowly spoke to me over time, so that it wasn't the same. Like I was attracted to Matisse's Bathers like instantly when I saw it. That was sort of where my sensibility was. These other things that I'm showing, like my honorable mentions, are things that were slow for me to understand and to see and to sink into my own practice.
Yes.
We should go to the honorable mentions though, so that we don't run out of time.
Yeah.
Oh, winner.
There's no winner.
There's no winner. We're both losers. We're both losers, but we were both right in a certain way.
Yeah.
Our choices.
Well, that's why I'm saying, like, I feel like if you took the collection, the 10 that we chose, and the guesses, and you put them all together, like that really maps out, like a 30-year relationship.
Yeah, and that's the other thing. Like for my choices of yours, I also wanted to use it as an opportunity to show more things, more of my own things, but things that I thought reflected you. So like the Alex Katz paintings. I remember one time when we would go to the movies together, and you would be freaked out of the giant heads on the screen. And so I wanted to be able to tell that story, talking about the Alex Katz.
We particularly
and Wes Anderson.
we had that particular freak out. This is going to be a really weird thing to say, but we had that particular big head syndrome freak out when we saw Mrs. Doubtfire. And
Yeah.
I don't know why you and I went to go see Mrs. Doubtfire together, but it was fun.
Well, yeah.
All right. Honorable mentions.
Let's do it. All right. These are mine. Ragnar Carthison and the National. I don't know if you saw that piece, Jorge, but you would love it.
I think I did see it. Yeah.
Did you see it?
Yeah,
so when it was first shown a couple years back, I think the museum just acquired it.
Yeah.
Like they showed it in its entirety, 6 hours of the National playing this song Sorrow over and over and over again. When they first showed it, I had to do an orientation for my class, my research studio at SAIC. And I had this idea that during the orientation, I would just take the students there and we would sit there the whole time, and that was like the orientation to the class. I love this idea of endurance work.
Sure.
And I liked very much that they took someone in sort of popular music or semi-popular music to do an endurance piece.
Yep.
So that I enjoy. The K. Rosen, you were right there. I love this piece. I love the play on words. I love the idea that when you turn floor upside down, it says roof, as long as you make the L drip down.
Yeah.
Kerry James Marshall, I remember seeing that show together, that pivotal show in 1995 about Place. Kerry James Marshall, Bryce Barton, one other person.
Leonardo, Drew, Ann Hamilton.
Oh, all those people were in it? I thought it was only three.
So. That's the one where the Ann Hamilton piece was with the curtain, which also was really important, but not in the museum's collection.
I mean, the Kerry James Marshall, for obvious reasons. But it's like a treatise on painting.
Yes.
And so is the Bathers by Matisse, but Fred Sandback, the string that defines the space.
Yeah.
Like I love the nothingness of that and the permission to use nothing to make a work and to define a space. And this Doris Salcedo came last moment. I was trying to pick one last thing. And remember, these are all works that are not currently on view. So these would be tops if they were on view. But that Doris Salcedo I saw it since the first times that we started going to the museum. But
she was in that show too. She was in the About Place show too.
She was. Yeah. And this piece is haunting. It's haunting to this day. And when I read, and it's funny because I just read what it was about for the first time. And it's even more haunting when you read the description. But it reminds me of the Michelangelo sculptures of the slaves trying to break through the stone in certain ways. And I remember seeing those for the first time in my life and how impactful those were. But this has a similar feel, like things going in and out of existence.
Right. So my honorable mentions these are amazing. And so here are the pieces that again, two of them are in the video, the George Brock and the Rufino Tamayo. Just the impact of the way that the form was treated, the sort of risks the artists were taking. The Edward Hopper piece, of course, is maybe the first thing at the Art Institute that I ever saw in terms of art in my entire life. And what I mean by that is I had an English teacher at the high school that we went to. Were you in that class, actually? Were we in that class together?
I'm not sure what they did.
And they had this poster. They had the poster of the Nighthawks in the back of the room. Yeah. And I just remember looking at it all the time. And I tried to make a replica of it when I was in high school. So, of course, when I went to school here and I found out that painting was in the collection, and that sort of switch happened in my head where I realized that things existed in the quote unquote real in that way was really important. And then of course, this William de Kooning painting, which is probably to this day my favorite William de Kooning painting. And just an amazing, it's funny to see it this tiny because it's really impressive. You have to kind of stand in front of it to see it big. It sort of overwhelms your field of vision, right? And I feel that the Jeff Wall does the same thing. And again, looking at it in the slide it doesn't do it any justice because it's in a light box, right? And so when you actually see the piece, it's lit from behind, and it leaves a different kind of impression because of that. Of course, the Rockwell Kent piece is just, again, a little tiny, little obscure thing that's in the museum. It's not tiny, the painting in and of itself, it's big. But I've always had kind of a soft spot in my heart for like regionalist painting, and, Grant Wood, Thomas Hart Benton. I know they're not in the same batch of people, right? But just these little sort of offshoot groups of painters, right? So even Arthur Dove and Marsden Hartley and Georgia O'Keeffe. I always just loved going to look at that stuff and learning about it. And Rockwell Kent was sort of this one character that I was more fascinated about because of his prints than I was of his paintings. But when I found this, I would come back to it over and over again. So it was in the list of finalists that didn't end up making
The
it.
only thing that surprises me here, the only one thing is the Jeff Wall.
Really?
Everything else is more like they were on my list, possible list of things that I would choose for you as your works.
Yeah.
I didn't think you would go Edward Hopper though. That's like you would not go back
that far back. I
school.
actually saw somebody in the chat here. Somebody wants to know what high school we went to, and I actually think Miss Tanzer is in the audience also.
Our high school counselor.
Yeah.
My high school counselor.
Yeah. So we went to Glenbard East in Lombard.
Yeah. Boring town. Interesting time, interesting school.
Really, really kind of a nice art department at the time that we were there, with a really robust group of like art kids. And I think that was the beginning, because we really, it wasn't competitive, but it was one of those things that sort of, we saw each other doing things and we pushed each other to do more and more.
I was in photography and Jorge was like the painting jock. And he was the painting star. And I said, that's where I want to be. I want to be in the painting room. So I signed up for a painting room, but he was like the superstar. He would make gigantic paintings. He had this one painting that he was working on in the back, and we didn't really know each other. We knew of each other, but we weren't friends. We were from different sort of circles. And one time I was shaking some paint in the back of the room where the easels were. And I accidentally shot some yellow paint on Jorge's painting, and I just pretended like I didn't do it. I went away because, of course, I was a little afraid of getting caught. And I hear him a little later screaming, "Who put this yellow paint on my canvas?" Through the process, I think he decided that he liked that yellow paint.
I left it,
but he didn't. But I think I finally told him that I was the one who put that yellow paint there years later. I think we might have already been at SAIC, or at least, we were already there, right?
Yeah.
And we realized that was our first collaborative piece.
Well, it's 1:00.
That was awesome. That was so great. Hold on a sec. There we go. That was so awesome. I'm sorry that you didn't get any right answers for selecting each other's picks.
No, I made it better.
But I think we got all the right answers. Like, I think all the pieces were right within the context of the conversation.
We're both winners.
Yeah, definitely. I think everyone won here. Yeah, and there's over 300,000 works of art, and I think maybe an underestimation of your clown sensibility, Jorge. So that to factor in. No, this is cool. It felt like walking around the galleries with you, only I was like sitting in a chair at my house, and we would have never been able to see 30 artworks in like 1 hour. So I think it was great. Thank you both so much for coming and for doing this program with us. Everyone who signed on, thank you for joining us. We've got lots of programs coming up, tons that we're doing online, but also the museum is open. So just encourage you to come out and check out these works in person. If you're coming online, we've got performances and educator talks and conversations with people from all over the place on Zoom. So we hope to see you all soon. So thanks a lot, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.